The notification pinged at 11:47 p.m., just as I was debugging the latest disaster in our company's payment system. My wife Olivia's face lit up my phone screen with that practice smile she wore for social media photos. "Don't worry, babe. It's just a girls' trip with shopping and spa treatments. Back Sunday night. Love you." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Something felt off. Olivia had mentioned this trip exactly once, 3 days ago, in passing while she was rushing out to meet her friend Cassie for drinks. No details, no excitement, no endless planning sessions that usually accompanied her getaways. "Hopefully the shopping and spa will be paid for by someone else," I texted back, adding a winking emoji to mask the unease creeping up my spine. My name is Ryan Mitchell, and I've been married to Olivia for 6 years. I'm a senior software engineer at TechFlow Solutions, pulling down decent money debugging other people's mistakes. We live in Meadowbrook Heights, one of those pristine suburban developments where every lawn looks like it was measured with a ruler and every house has a smart doorbell that records your neighbor's business. Our house is a monument to modern convenience and emotional emptiness. Alexa controls everything from the thermostat to the coffee maker, but she can't fix a marriage that's been running on autopilot for the past year. I closed my laptop and walked to the kitchen, grabbing a beer from our stainless steel refrigerator. The house felt different with Olivia gone. Not better or worse, just different. Like a museum after closing time. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my old friend Danny, who runs a boxing gym downtown where I still train twice a week to keep the software engineer gut at bay. "Dude, check Instagram. Your wife's girls' trip looks interesting." My stomach dropped. I opened Instagram and searched for Olivia's profile. Her latest story showed her at some upscale rooftop bar, surrounded by what were definitely not just girls. In the background, I spotted a familiar face that made me freeze. Jake Morrison. My college roommate turned rival, the guy who'd stolen my promotion at my first job, slept with my girlfriend in senior year, and somehow always managed to make me look like the loser in every situation. Jake, with his perfect teeth and his finance bro swagger, raising a martini glass toward the camera. I screenshot the image and zoomed in. There was Olivia, laughing at something Jake was saying, her hand resting on his arm in a way that was definitely not platonic. Her friend Cassie stood behind them, but something about her expression caught my attention. She wasn't looking at Jake or Olivia. She was looking directly at the camera with a satisfied smirk. "What the hell?" I muttered, scrolling through more of the tagged photos. The girls' trip was apparently taking place at the Marriott downtown, not some spa resort 2 hours away like Olivia had mentioned. I called Danny. "You saw it too, huh?" he answered without preamble. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, pacing around our kitchen island. "Man, I don't know. But Jake's been posting photos from that bar all week. Same group every night. Your wife's been in at least 3 of them." I felt something shift inside me, like a gear clicking into place. The late nights at work, the new clothes, the way Olivia had been treating me like a roommate instead of a husband. It all made sense now. "Danny, I need a favor." "Name it." "I'm going to drive downtown. If this goes sideways, I might need someone to bail me out of jail." "Ryan, don't do anything stupid." But I was already grabbing my keys. The Marriott's parking garage was dimly lit and smelled like exhaust fumes and broken dreams. I found Jake's black BMW easily. The vanity plates reading Finbro 1 were hard to miss. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and started recording. I didn't have a plan. 6 years of marriage, and I was about to throw it all away based on some Instagram photos and a gut feeling. But as I stood there in that concrete tomb, I realized the marriage had been over for months. I'd just been too comfortable, too complacent to notice. The elevator ride to the lobby felt like an eternity. The Marriott's bar was exactly what I expected. Overpriced cocktails, dim lighting, and the kind of fake sophistication that attracted people like Jake. I spotted them immediately. Olivia was wearing the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. She was leaning into Jake, whispering something in his ear that made him laugh. Cassie sat across from them, occasionally glancing around the room like she was expecting someone. I walked up to their table and cleared my throat. "Hey, honey, how's the spa treatment going?" Olivia's face went white. Jake, to his credit, barely flinched. He just smiled that same smug smile I remembered from college. "Ryan, what are you doing here?" Olivia's voice was an octave higher than normal. "Funny story, I was debugging code tonight when I got curious about your girls' trip. Imagine my surprise when Instagram showed you having drinks with my old buddy Jake here." Jake extended his hand like we were at a networking event. Ryan, good to see you, man. Small world, right? I ran into Olivia and Cassie here, and we were just catching up. I ignored his hand. Catching up. Right. Is that what we're calling it now? Ryan, you're being paranoid, Olivia said, but her voice lacked conviction. We were just having a drink before heading back to the hotel. Which hotel would that be? Because according to your credit card statement, you know, the one that comes to my email, you've been staying here for 3 nights. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Cassie was recording everything on her phone, which struck me as odd. Who records their friend's marriage imploding? Look, Ryan, Jake said, leaning back in his chair. I think there's been a misunderstanding here. The only misunderstanding is me thinking my wife was at a spa instead of playing house with the guy who screwed me over in college. That's enough, Olivia snapped. You're embarrassing yourself. Something about that phrase, the way she said it, like I was the problem, flipped a switch in my brain. I'd been the understanding husband, the guy who worked late so she could pursue her marketing career, the one who never questioned her girls' nights or weekend shopping trips. I'm embarrassing myself? I laughed, and it came out bitter and harsh. You're right, Olivia. I am embarrassing myself. I've been embarrassing myself for months, pretending not to notice that my wife checks out of our marriage while I'm debugging code to pay for her lifestyle. I turned to Jake. And you? Still the same guy who can't get a woman without stealing her from someone else? Some things never change. Jake stood up, and I remembered he had about 3 inches and 30 pounds on me. But I also remembered that I'd been boxing twice a week for the past 5 years, and Jake's muscles came from a gym membership, not from getting punched in the face. I think you should leave, Jake said. I think you should go to hell. That's when hotel security showed up. Apparently Cassie had called them while I was having my breakdown. 2 large men in blazers approached our table with the kind of authority that comes from dealing with drunk businessmen every night. Sir, we're going to need you to leave, one of them said. I looked at Olivia one more time. She wouldn't meet my eyes. You know what? You're right. I should leave. But not because hotel security asked me to. I should leave because my wife is a liar and a cheat, and I deserve better than this. I walked away, but not before I heard Jake say something to Olivia about handling me. That phrase would stick with me for the next few days as I planned my response. In the parking garage, I took out my keys and walked over to Jake's BMW. The tires were expensive, probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. It would be a shame if something happened to them. I didn't slash them. That would be destruction of property. Instead, I used my car key to let the air out of all 4 tires. Technically, no permanent damage, just a massive inconvenience. Then I left a note on Olivia's windshield. Hope you packed your dignity. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Olivia had apparently discovered my little gift to Jake's BMW, and she was not pleased. How could you do that? You're acting like a psychopath. Jake had to call a tow truck. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? We need to talk when I get home. I made coffee and ignored all of them. Instead, I called in sick to work and spent the morning going through our shared accounts, credit card statements, and phone records. What I found was a masterpiece of deception. Olivia had been meeting Jake regularly for 2 months. Dinners, drinks, hotel rooms charged to her corporate card and claimed as business expenses. She'd been living a double life, and I'd been too busy with work to notice. But the more I dug, the more I realized this wasn't just a simple affair. The timing was too convenient, the setup too elaborate. Someone had orchestrated this whole thing, and I was starting to suspect it wasn't Jake. My phone rang. Danny. How'd it go last night? About as well as you'd expect. I may have deflated Jake's tires. Jesus, Ryan. Please tell me you didn't do anything else stupid. Define stupid. Anything that could get you arrested. Then no, nothing stupid. But Danny, I need your help with something. You still have contacts in private investigation, right? A few. Why? I want to know everything about Jake Morrison and Cassie Williams. Financial records, employment history, social media activity, everything. Ryan, that's going to cost money. I don't care. I want to know who I'm really dealing with here. Danny was quiet for a moment. You sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes it's better to just walk away. They made it personal when they decided to humiliate me in public. Now I'm going to return the favor. 3 days later, Danny called me with information that changed everything. You're not going to believe this, he said. But your wife's friend Cassie, she used to work for your company. What? 5 years ago. She was in marketing, same department as your wife. Guess who signed off on her termination? Me? Bingo, she was embezzling from the client entertainment budget. Small amounts, but consistent. You caught it during a routine audit and reported it to HR. She was fired and blacklisted from the industry. Suddenly everything made sense. The smug look on Cassie's face at the bar, the way she'd been recording my confrontation with Olivia, the elaborate setup of the girls' trip. This wasn't just about my wife having an affair. This was revenge. There's more, Danny continued. Jake's in some financial trouble. His investment firm is being investigated by the SEC for some questionable trades. Nothing criminal yet, but his reputation is shot. Word is he's looking for a way to disappear for a while. And Olivia? Clean, as far as I can tell. But Ryan, I think she's being played just as much as you are. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The man looking back at me was tired, angry, and ready for war. But he was also smarter than he'd been a week ago. If Cassie wanted to play games, I was going to teach her the rules. I spent the next week playing the role of the defeated husband. I moved into the guest bedroom, avoided Olivia's attempts at conversation, and generally acted like a man who'd given up. It wasn't hard. Part of me really had given up on our marriage. But I hadn't given up on getting even. Danny's private investigator friend had provided me with a goldmine of information. Cassie was living beyond her means in an expensive downtown apartment, funding her lifestyle through a series of increasingly desperate schemes. She'd been catfishing lonely men on dating apps, selling fake designer goods online, and running a small-time insurance fraud operation. Jake's situation was even more interesting. The SEC investigation was further along than anyone knew, and he was about to lose his license to trade securities. His BMW was leased, his condo was mortgaged to the hilt, and he owed money to some very unforgiving people. They were both desperate, which made them dangerous but also predictable. I started with Jake. His gym was one of those trendy places where people paid $200 a month to lift weights and take selfies. I knew his routine from his Instagram posts. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m., he'd spend 2 hours working on his gains and posting motivational quotes about success. I waited in the parking lot until he went inside, then got to work. I didn't touch his car this time. Instead, I placed a small GPS tracker under his bumper, the kind you can buy online for tracking your teenager's driving habits. Completely legal, since I wasn't planning to use it for stalking or harassment. Then I went home and waited. The tracker showed Jake's movements for the next week, and the pattern was enlightening. He wasn't just meeting Olivia for their affair. He was meeting with 3 other married women, all of them wealthy, all of them lonely. Jake wasn't just a cheater. He was running a full-scale operation targeting vulnerable wives. I screenshotted everything and saved it to a secure folder on my computer. Next was Cassie. Her apartment building had terrible security, which made my job easier. I waited until she left for work, then slipped into the building behind another resident. Her mailbox was overflowing with past due notices, court summons, and collection agency letters. I took photos of everything visible through the mail slot, then went home to research. Cassie owed money to everyone, credit card companies, her landlord, the IRS, even a payday loan company. She was about to lose her apartment and probably face criminal charges for the insurance fraud. No wonder she was so eager to destroy my life. She had nothing left to lose. But I was about to give her something to lose. I created a fake email account and sent anonymous tips to the insurance companies she'd been defrauding, complete with documentation of her schemes. Then I sent copies to her landlord, her employer, and the local district attorney's office. Within 48 hours, Cassie's world started falling apart. She was fired from her job, evicted from her apartment, and arrested for insurance fraud. The local news even picked up the story. Local woman arrested in multi-thousand-dollar insurance scam. I felt a twinge of guilt, but it passed quickly. Cassie had orchestrated the destruction of my marriage for revenge. Now she was facing the consequences of her own actions. But I wasn't done yet. Jake called me on a Thursday afternoon, which was surprising since we hadn't spoken since the hotel confrontation. Ryan, we need to talk. Do we? Look, I know you're angry, but this situation has gotten out of hand. Cassie's been arrested, Olivia's a mess, and I think we need to clear the air. I almost laughed. Jake Morrison wanted to clear the air. The same Jake Morrison who'd been systematically destroying my marriage while running a con game on half the wives in the city. What did you have in mind? Meet me tonight at Murphy's Bar on 5th Street. Just you and me, man to man. We'll work this out. Murphy's was a dive bar in the kind of neighborhood where people minded their own business. It was also the kind of place where conversations weren't recorded by security cameras, which made me suspicious. Fine, 9 o'clock. I hung up and immediately called Danny. Jake wants to meet tonight. I think he's planning something. What kind of something? The kind where I end up in the hospital or worse. Can you be there as backup? Of course. But Ryan, Maybe it's time to just walk away. You've already won. Cassie's in jail, Jake's reputation is destroyed, and Olivia knows you're not the pushover she thought you were. It's not enough. They humiliated me in public, Danny. They made me look like a fool in front of everyone I know. I want them to feel what that's like. That evening, I arrived at Murphy's 15 minutes early and chose a table in the back where I could see the entrance. Danny was already there, sitting at the bar with a beer and a clear view of my table. Jake showed up right on time, but he wasn't alone. 2 large men in expensive suits followed him in and took seats near the door. Jake's backup plan, apparently. Ryan, thanks for coming. Jake sat down across from me, his usual confidence replaced by something that looked like desperation. Let's skip the pleasantries, Jake. What do you want? I want you to back off. Whatever you did to Cassie, whatever you're planning for me, it needs to stop. I didn't do anything to Cassie. She did it to herself when she decided to commit insurance fraud. Jake's jaw tightened. Don't play dumb. You destroyed her life because she helped expose your wife's affair. Cassie didn't expose anything. She orchestrated it. She manipulated Olivia into having an affair with you as revenge for getting her fired 5 years ago. You were just the weapon she used. For the first time since I'd known him, Jake looked genuinely surprised. That's not... Cassie said Olivia came to her about problems in your marriage. She said Olivia was already thinking about leaving you. And you believed her? Jake, you're being played just as much as I was. Cassie set this whole thing up to destroy my life, and she used you to do it. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots of his GPS tracking data. She also didn't tell you that I know about your other girlfriends. Sarah Henderson from Westfield, Maria Santos from downtown, Jennifer Walsh from the suburbs. Should I go on? Jake's face went white. How did you? The same way I found out about the SEC investigation, your financial problems, and the fact that you owe $50,000 to Tony Marconi's crew. Jake looked around the bar nervously. The mention of Tony Marconi had clearly hit home. What do you want? I want you to disappear. Leave town, leave my wife alone, and never contact either of us again. And if I don't, I smiled and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Then I send copies of everything I have on you to the SEC, the police, your other girlfriends' husbands, and Tony Marconi. I'm guessing at least one of those groups will be very interested in having a conversation with you. Jake stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. You're bluffing. Try me. He looked over at his backup muscle, then back at me. I could see the wheels turning in his head, weighing his options. Fine. I'll leave town. But this isn't over, Ryan. Yes, it is. Jake stood up and walked toward the door, his bodyguards following. But as he reached the exit, he turned back. You know Olivia never loved you, right? Even before Cassie got involved, she was looking for a way out. I was just convenient. The words hit harder than I expected, but I kept my expression neutral. Maybe. But at least I'm not the guy who has to leave town because he can't pay his debts. Jake left, and I sat alone at the table for a few more minutes, processing what had just happened. Danny came over and sat down. You okay? Yeah, I think so. So what now? I looked around Murphy's bar, the sticky floors, the neon beer signs, the regulars who'd probably been sitting on the same stools for 20 years. It wasn't much, but it was honest. Now I go home and have a conversation with my wife. Olivia was waiting for me when I got home, sitting at our kitchen island with a glass of wine and a stack of divorce papers. We need to talk, she said without looking up. I figured as much. I sat down across from her, noting how different she looked. The confident, polished marketing executive was gone, replaced by someone who looked tired and defeated. Jake left town today, she said. He said you threatened him. I gave him a choice. He made the smart decision. Ryan, I need you to understand something. What happened between Jake and me? It wasn't planned. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to have an affair. No, you didn't. Cassie decided that for you. Olivia looked up sharply. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the evidence Danny's investigator had compiled. The financial records, the employment history, the timeline of Cassie's revenge plot. Your best friend has been manipulating you for months, Olivia. She introduced you to Jake, encouraged you to meet him for drinks, probably even suggested the hotel rooms. She orchestrated this whole thing to get back at me for getting her fired. Olivia stared at the screen, her face cycling through confusion, realization, and finally anger. That manipulative bitch! She played both of us. The question is, what do we do now? Olivia was quiet for a long time, staring at her wine glass. I don't know if it matters why it started, Ryan. The fact is, I did have an affair. I lied to you, I humiliated you, and I broke our marriage vows. Yes, you did. And even if Cassie pushed me toward Jake, I'm the one who made the choice to sleep with him. I'm the one who lied about the girls' trip and the spa weekend. I nodded. There wasn't much to say to that. So, where does that leave us? I asked. Olivia pushed the divorce papers across the table. I've already signed them. The settlement is fair. You keep the house and your retirement accounts. I keep my car and my personal savings. No alimony, no custody issues to worry about. I looked at the papers but didn't touch them. Is this what you want, Olivia? Or is this what you think you deserve? Does it matter? It matters to me. She was crying now, quiet tears that she wiped away with the back of her hand. I don't know what I want anymore, Ryan. 6 months ago, I thought I wanted excitement, passion, something different from our routine. Cassie kept telling me I was settling, that I deserved better than a husband who worked all the time and never surprised me. And now? Now I realize that what we had wasn't perfect, but it was real. Jake never loved me, Ryan. He was using me just like Cassie was. But you, even after everything I did to you, you still cared enough to protect me from the truth about him. I thought about that. She was right. I could have let her find out about Jake's other women the hard way. I could have let her get deeper into Cassie's web of manipulation before revealing the truth. So what are you saying? I'm saying I made my choice when I got into bed with Jake Morrison, and now I have to live with the consequences. Olivia stood up and walked toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, Ryan, you deserved better than what I gave you, and whoever you end up with next is going to be very lucky. She left that night, and I never saw her again. 2 weeks later, I was back at Murphy's bar, celebrating the finalization of my divorce with Danny and a few other friends from the gym. The papers had been processed quickly. No contested assets, no custody disputes, just two people agreeing to go their separate ways. So what's next? Danny asked. You going to stay in the house? For now. I might sell it eventually, but there's no rush. And work? Same job, same routine. Turns out debugging code is a lot more satisfying when you don't have to come home to a lying wife. We were interrupted by a commotion near the front door. 3 men in suits had walked in, and they didn't look like they were there for the beer and wings special. I recognized one of them immediately, Tony Marconi's nephew, Vincent. I'd seen his picture in the newspaper often enough to know his face. Vincent scanned the bar until his eyes settled on our table, then walked over. You Ryan Mitchell? Depends who's asking. Vincent Marconi. I believe you know my Uncle Tony. Danny tensed beside me, but I stayed calm. Only by reputation. My uncle wanted me to thank you personally for the information you provided about Jake Morrison. Very helpful in locating our missing money. I'm glad I could help. Jake's going to be working off his debt for a very long time, assuming he survives the experience. Vincent smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. My uncle also wanted me to tell you that your debt to our family has been paid in full. Jake Morrison borrowed money using your wife's affair as leverage, claiming he could get access to your assets through her. When that fell through, he tried to skip town without paying. I felt a chill run down my spine. Jake had been planning to use Olivia to get to my money, probably with Cassie's help. The affair wasn't just about revenge or passion. It was about theft. I appreciate your uncle's understanding. He's a businessman, Mr. Mitchell. He understands that sometimes good people get caught up in other people's schemes, but he also wanted me to remind you that information is a valuable commodity. If you ever come across anything else that might interest our family, we'd be happy to compensate you appropriately. Vincent handed me a business card with just a phone number on it. Think about it. He left with his associates, and the bar slowly returned to normal. Danny was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. What the hell was that about? Insurance, I said, tucking the card into my wallet. Insurance? Jake Morrison wasn't just running a con game on lonely wives, Danny. He was stealing from the mob to fund his lifestyle. When I destroyed his operation, I probably saved Tony Marconi a lot of time and effort tracking him down. And now you're connected to the mob? Now I'm protected by the mob. There's a difference. Danny shook his head. You've changed, Ryan. 6 months ago, you were a software engineer with a cheating wife. Now you're some kind of criminal mastermind with mob connections. I'm still a software engineer. I just learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty to protect yourself. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Congratulations on your divorce. Hope you're happy with what you've done. This isn't over. See. I showed the message to Danny. Cassie's out on bail. What are you going to do? I finished my beer and stood up. Nothing. Cassie Williams is about to learn that some people are better left alone. I walked outside and dialed the number on Vincent Marconi's business card. Mr. Marconi? It's Ryan Mitchell. I have some information that might interest your uncle. Epilogue. 6 months later. I was debugging a particularly stubborn piece of code when my assistant knocked on my office door. Mr. Mitchell, there's a police detective here to see you. Detective Sarah Chen walked into my office with the kind of confident stride that comes from years of dealing with people who think they're smarter than the law. Mr. Mitchell, I'm investigating the disappearance of Cassie Williams. Her family says she's been missing for 3 weeks. I'm sorry to hear that, Detective. How can I help? When was the last time you had contact with Ms. Williams? About 6 months ago, when she was arrested for insurance fraud. She sent me a threatening text message after my divorce was finalized, but I haven't heard from her since. Detective Chen consulted her notebook. According to her phone records, she made several calls to a number associated with organized crime figures. Any idea why she might have done that? None whatsoever. Cassie and I weren't close. But you did get her fired from TechFlow Solutions 5 years ago. I reported financial irregularities that I discovered during a routine audit. HR made the decision to terminate her employment. Detective Chen studied my face, looking for tells. Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to be direct with you. Cassie Williams had a lot of enemies when she disappeared. Angry insurance companies, victims of her fraud schemes, and apparently some very dangerous people she owed money to. But her family seems to think you were involved somehow. Detective, I'm a software engineer. I debug code and attend meetings. I don't make people disappear. No, but you do seem to have a talent for providing information to people who do. She was fishing, but she was close to the truth. After Cassie's threatening text, I'd made another call to Vincent Marconi. I'd explained that the woman who'd orchestrated my wife's affair was now threatening me, and that she'd been asking questions about Tony Marconi's business operations. Vincent had thanked me for the information and assured me that the problem would be handled discreetly. Detective, if Cassie Williams is missing, I hope you find her, but I had nothing to do with her disappearance. Detective Chen handed me her business card. If you think of anything else, please call me. After she left, I went back to my code. The bug I'd been chasing was finally revealing itself, a simple logic error that had been causing thousands of dollars in processing delays. I fixed it with 3 lines of code and marked the ticket as resolved. My phone buzzed with a text from Danny. Drinks tonight? I have news about Jake Morrison. Good news or bad news? I replied. Depends on your perspective. He's working as a dishwasher in Atlantic City. Apparently, he'll be doing that for the next 15 years to pay off his debt. I smiled and put my phone away. Jake Morrison, the golden boy who'd always landed on his feet, was finally facing consequences for his actions. Cassie Williams had disappeared into whatever hole people like Vincent Marconi used for disposing of problems. Olivia was living in California, working for a startup and dating a yoga instructor she'd met on a hiking app. And I was still debugging code, but now I came home to a house that felt like mine instead of a museum. Sometimes justice doesn't come from the courts or the police. Sometimes it comes from understanding that information is power, and power is only useful if you're willing to use it. I learned that lesson the hard way, but I learned it well. As I packed up my office for the day, I thought about the man I'd been 6 months ago. Naive, trusting, willing to believe that good people would be rewarded and bad people would be punished by some cosmic sense of fairness. That man was gone, replaced by someone who understood that the world doesn't owe you justice. You have to take it for yourself. And sometimes you have to be willing to become the villain in someone else's story to be the hero in your own. I walked out of the office and into the evening air, breathing deeply and feeling truly free for the first time in years. They'd wanted to destroy me, but they'd only made me stronger.